That one day, the Super Bowl day, everybody watches the ads. Why does television not feel like the Super Bowl every day? So I came down to Google. One of the top ideas on the list was, why aren't ads skippable? You take a video ad and then don't charge the advertiser if the person skips. The incentive to create a good ad is now much higher. She called me up and said, there's actually another group that might be a better fit. We just bought this company, YouTube, and they're kind of struggling with how to turn it into a business.
And so you spend 5 years there. You started Coda. You spent 8 or 9 years building that business. Then you get acquired into Grammarly recently, and then you became the CEO. And then boom, you raise $1 billion.
We're turning Grammarly from being a single agent to grammar agent to being a platform for agents, where one of our superpowers is we have a lot of context. Does ChatGPT or Google or Microsoft have a particularly good moat that way? I don't think so, because I think the number of applications people use is much wider than people think. Take a guess. How many applications do you think we pay for at Grammarly?
I don't know, 150?
Okay, 972. If you think about the world of productivity, I kind of think of it as there's one half of it that's work artifacts, and there's a world of communication, because this is how we talk to each other. So that seems like an obvious place to go look. And I sat down with Rahul Vora, the CEO of Superhuman, and we said, what would we do if we were doing this together? And it was just crazy exciting. The existing Superhuman email experience is amazing. I think what we're about to build with it is much more exciting even than what's there today. And just became an obvious one to build as the next part of the suite.
Welcome to Grit. I'm Joubin, partner at Kleiner Perkins, a show where we go beyond the highlight reel and explore the personal and professional challenges of building history-making companies. Today on the show, we have Shishir Mehrotra, CEO of Grammarly. Before this role, Shishir founded Coda, which actually recently got acquired into Grammarly, and then he became the CEO. Before that, he was the Chief Product and Technology Officer of YouTube. And today at Grammarly, he has incredibly exciting ambitions of what he calls the AI superhighway. Enjoy the conversation. You were the Chief Product Officer of YouTube?
So officially I was CPTO, like the product and engineering.
Okay.
The way we ran YouTube, so there was basically like, I worked for a guy named Salar, who was kind of like closest, in company terms, he's like the chairman. So he'd come in a day a week or something like that. And then myself and a guy named Robert Kinsel kind of co-ran YouTube.
Got it.
And so I ran the tech side, he ran the business side.
And when you were there, was podcasts not that big at all at that point?
Not at all.
Because
it was like 5 years after
I'll tell you why I started pushing on video. Number one, because I did think it needed to natively embed into Spotify.
Yeah.
But number two, honestly, because I ended up, I'm like the number one podcast consumer.
Right.
And my own behavior started to drift towards video.
Right.
Mainly because I wanted the bimodality option, where if I'm cooking, I can put it on my laptop, and then if I take a shower, I can listen to it, or if I'm on a run, I can listen to it.
Yeah.
And if you're on Spotify, not everybody is on video.
Right.
Most aren't. Whereas on YouTube, you know what I mean? And so...
Well, I two things. So I'd say YouTube, yes, were podcasts real. Podcast the term, no. But YouTube was vloggers before anything. And vlogging and podcasting is very similar.
Yeah.
It's not, the camera setup's a little different.
Totally.
But like a lot of vloggers were interviewers.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know if you remember the original days of YouTube, like the biggest ones, Ray William Johnson, like all these guys, like they sat down with somebody and talked. Like it was the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I would say that was YouTube's format to lose. It's like, but the world like renamed it, made it audio, and then brought it back to video. And I think YouTube team did a really nice job recognizing that, and then doing the little bit of Safari to Zoo transformation you have to do to like make it feel like a thing. That's one thought. The other thought is the audio primary versus video primary dynamic. It shows up in the business model. So for YouTube, I was there for this decision, was we made background audio a paid feature. And that was like so you can like do what you said. Instead of watching on YouTube, I can put it on a laptop.
That was the unlock for me. But as soon as I started paying for it, I could go back and forth.
But you want to go on a run with YouTube, you have to pay, right?
Yep.
And Spotify is the exact opposite. Right? It's actually the background is free, and like offline is paid, and a bunch of other things are paid. But actually, because it's audio primary, so you get a different audience who is kind of unlocking the vantage point differently. For me, I find the video to be for like podcasts and so on to be completely optional. Like I really love,
Yeah.
that's like the car works, the run works, like so on. It's like, oh, every once in a while, I was like, oh, that's what the person looks like. Cool. I don't need to look at them for an hour. Like
Totally.
I can kind of picture the rest of it.
Totally.
But I want to hear it while I'm doing something else. And so I found that for me personally, it's kind of leaned me one way. But there's plenty of people that are the other direction. And I, if I were you, I'd be everywhere, which you are doing. There's no reason to pick. It's not a...
On the safari to the zoo analogy that you used, if you were to put like your product and engineering hat on, and you said like there's little tweaks, I suspect they're not actually that little, but like, do you think there are product tweaks? Do you think there are like marketing tweaks? Do you think there are engineering tweaks to go from something for everybody to something for somebody, even though they're relatively similar things?
Okay, what I'd say about Zoo Safari is in those early days, I think the case where it was actually there were a couple categories where YouTube was where the Zoo players had a real play against YouTube, the Safari player, and the two most obvious ones were music and gaming. And it's actually, if you like think back of YouTube history, it's sort of interesting to think about that. The phrase we would always use for YouTube is YouTube did to cable what cable did to broadcast. We went from 3 channels to 300 channels, and then from 300 channels to 3 million channels. And that was the evolution. The two categories that did particularly well on YouTube that started to have standalone competitors were the two categories that actually didn't do well on cable. So MTV failed, music failed. And G4 was the gaming channel that also failed. But in these two cases, Spotify grew on one side and Twitch grew on the other side. And so there was this constant tension of what do we do? Do we stick with Safari or do we go with Zoo? And what does that feel like? And it was constant tension. I mean, we went back and forth on launch a YouTube music app or not, YouTube gaming app or not. Should it be an app? Should it be a shelf? Should it be a filter? Should it be a button? Should it be a special video type? Should you not be able to scroll between them? And so, and I think that if I had to reflect, I think while I was there, we were very religious about Safari primary. Like it was very important that you could go
broad, not deep.
Broad, not only broad, not deep, but intentionally intermixed. Like it was desirable to go from a comedian to a music video to a podcaster to it was very like that. And remember, like YouTube nowadays, it's a scrollable feed. At the time, that journey happened through related videos. So that was the equivalent before scrollable feeds was, the click-through rate on related videos on YouTube while I was there was 65%. So it was if you were watching something, there was a better, and by the way, to contextualize that, it was about the same. If you were watching a video on YouTube, your chance of clicking a related video was about the same as the chance of clicking the top link in a Google search.
Wow.
It's about the same.
65% is high.
It's crazy high. I mean, I had this running fun conversation with Chris Cox was over at Facebook, and we used to have breakfast together every few quarters and just compare notes.
And he runs product to Facebook.
Now again does that.
Yeah.
And he used to say YouTube was the only property. This is desktop days, right? YouTube is the only property on the internet that's made a good use of the right rail. Like every other property on the internet, Facebook put birthdays over there.
Right.
You put ads over there that nobody ever looked at. But YouTube, like our big unit, was over there, 65% click-through rate. And it was very clear that was our secret, right? Our secret wasn't that you could come and search. So we're the world's second biggest search engine, but it drove less than 10% of views. All the views were driven off of this loop happening through related videos. And so when we talk Safari, the key question was, are you allowed to have a related video that is in a different class than the one you're watching now? Are you allowed to switch cages, to use a Zoo Safari analogy? And we thought it was really important that you should be able to go from comedy to podcast to music to gaming to
Safari.
To Safari.
And you were in that camp.
I think the product was. It wasn't. It was I think it's it's not.
What was the other competing tension then?
Well, what do you do about the Twitch user? What do you do about
right? Because you're seeing Twitch and Spotify grow,
exactly,
and you're like, oh no,
what do you do?
Like, are we leaving?
Yeah, are you leaving something on the table? And the problem is, there's, and I think that YouTube, like Shorts, is very much from a format perspective a Zoo, and it kind of had to be because it's you can't really flip back and forth, vertical video, horizontal video. Right. It's just different enough. And they leaned into it and they lived with it. And I think that's been a good choice. It's obviously the dominant format now.
And the content is relatively consistent?
It's not. I mean, I would say it's I think it's still Safari from that perspective.
Yeah.
From a format perspective, it's Zoo.
Yeah.
But from a content perspective, it's Safari.
Yeah.
And so I think that is, and I would say, but if you go to Spotify is Safari in kind of both dimensions. Like it's like you're very unlikely. Like when you're in music, you're in music. When you're in podcast, you're in podcast.
Yeah.
Like the player feels a little different. And I think you just lean into it. You lean into the strength of the product.
Yeah.
I'd also say that premium products, like products you pay for, like I think the Safari nature is the Zoo nature is like it's a little bit easier to understand what you're paying for. It's like I'm here. I'm paying for podcasts. I'm paying for audiobooks. I'm paying for this music, this playlist, so on. So I think some of that maybe influences it. But one product grew up as Safari, the other product grew up as Zoo. They both leaned into it. I think it's okay. And it just caused constant tension of which way should we be?
Yeah. And on the sidebar recommender feed.
Yeah.
Like in many ways, I've never thought about this until right now. But the reason the click-through rate is so high is because you're giving somebody, the algorithm is giving somebody exactly what they want based on what they're seeing, which is probably like one of the great early AI use cases, honestly.
I mean, I think people talk a lot about TikTok having a better algorithm for this. And so I think the idea of some form of collaborative filtering of people who watch this also watch this, people who, Amazon is pretty famous for it in book recommendations, and they scaled it into everything. People who buy this also buy this. People who look at this also look at this. It's one of the, when you take your first machine learning class in college, the first thing you learn is like, how do you do collaborative filtering? And so I think that idea, the algorithm isn't the hard part. The hard part is that you need a lot of data. Like you need people to go through that many, many times so that you start understanding patterns and where people will and won't get into pits. And because what you want to prevent is like, I kind of run out. It's like, oh, people watch this, watch this. People watch this, watch this. People watch this. Oh, and then I'm done. So you want to like never run out. You want that feeling of infinite. And so I think these days it's become, a thumb action this direction. At the time, the dominant way to do it was a click on a related video. I think it has the same dynamic.
And before you were on the YouTube team, you were on the Google TV team?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But just to be
clear, it wasn't
clear,
called Google TV then.
But just to be clear, not YouTube TV.
No. YouTube TV didn't exist.
It didn't exist then.
Yeah, no. So the history is okay.
Which is crazy.
I gave a little bit of history. So basically, my story is I actually turned down going to Google in 2002. So I started this company called Centrata, a client funded company. Just when Vinod was here, and so started Centrata, decided to leave. Had a choice between going to Google and going to Microsoft. I chose Microsoft. Long story on why. My wife still calls it my $1 billion mistake.
Yeah.
I think I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But the Google team stayed pretty close. So over the years, they would keep pinging me. This guy named Jonathan Rosenberg ran product there. And so he'd ping me, every few months. I think I was on his old tickle list of like, how are you doing? And so a few years later, he kind of broke through and was like, I'm thinking about leaving. And so I came down to Google and he had me meet all the different people. This was late 2007, early 2008.
Yeah.
And he said, had me meet all the people and I got to learn about all these, like many of the things we now know Google for were just starting then. So like Android had just started, Chrome had just started, Gmail had just started. Like all these things were just getting off the ground. He had me meet all these people and at the end of the day, I came in and said, so what do you think? You want to join? And I said, I don't know. I'm at Microsoft. Feels like a big company. This kind of feels like another big company. I don't know. It doesn't seem that exciting to me. And he got really mad at me. And he said, no, you don't understand. Like everything is ahead of us. You said you saw all these other crazy things, but actually the company at its core is an advertising company. And the vast majority of dollars at the time, it was like 90+% of dollars were spent on television advertising. And then he said this magic sentence. He said, and nobody even watches those stupid television ads. And to me, I had never bought or sold an ad in my life. Like I've worked on all other types of software, but I'd never worked on advertising. That statement was actually news to me. There's like that all the money is in television. And I hadn't really thought about like the fact that people skip all the ads and so on. And so I was just kind of like thinking about it. I got on a plane afterwards. It was like 2 weeks after the Super Bowl. I guess it must have been February. And the Patriots had just lost to the Giants. And we always have people over for the Super Bowl. And I was thinking about, that one day, the Super Bowl day, everybody watches the ads. Like, in fact, like people ask me to rewind, not to watch the play, but to like go back and watch the ad. And so I ended up writing this little position paper that said, why does television not feel like the Super Bowl every day? Like, what's different about that day? And so I started writing up my view of what that was, and I had a few different ideas. And I woke up the next morning, I sent it to Jonathan, and I said, hey, look, I don't know anything about advertising. I'm sure you've seen all these ideas before, but if you'd like, I'd love to see someone improve this experience. Just thought you might enjoy these ideas. And like one of the top ideas on the list was, why aren't ads skippable? Like, why don't you make it so that you take a video ad, television ad, you make it skippable, and then don't charge the advertiser if the person skips. And it sounded just like AdWords, sounded just like Google. It's like the incentive to create a good ad is now much higher, because if people skip your ad, then you're not going to get any impressions, and the publisher won't get paid. And so I sent it to him. It's like, this seems like such an obvious Google idea. Why don't you do this? And he wrote back right away, and he said, actually, nobody here is working on that. And if you'd want, we've got this little team of 10 people. Why don't you come and try to help reinvent television and work on you can have that idea be part of the idea set for that group. And I just got really excited. I made the job decision in like 30 minutes. It was like this massive decision. I'd move me and my wife and so on. And it was just like really exciting. What I didn't realize, and the team he handed me was called Mosaic, and they were working on interactive television. And we had this partnership first with Panasonic and then with Sony to build a device that was an interactive television device. And the idea was like, if you're going to build interactive television, one of the things you can do is affect advertising. But it turned out that project was a little bit ahead of its time. Mm. And so I showed up, and it was honestly like the first 3-4 months working on it was really frustrating. It's like none of the hardware really worked. The experience, like nothing was on the internet yet. Like there's no video on the internet. Mm. So this idea nowadays, Google TV, or what became Chromecast and now back to Google TV, is like all these video services. None of that existed then.
Right.
So it's kind of a frustrating experience. And then one day I was reporting to this woman, Susan Wojcicki, who passed away recently. And she was running ads for Google, but she had this sort of odd fitting project. And she called me up and said, the thing you wanted to work on with all this advertising stuff, there's actually another group that might be a better fit. We just bought this company, YouTube, and they're kind of struggling with how to turn it into a business. How would you feel about going over there and doing that? And so I ended up, it was kind of like really circuitous path that ended up, and so I joined YouTube in mid 2008, and with the first focus on monetization, with this kind of idea of like maybe we could change how advertising works.
And sorry, so Google TV ended up becoming Chromecast.
So the history is I stepped out of that role. We put somebody else in that role, a guy named Ben Ling, and then eventually a guy named Rishi Chandra. And they figured out, we shipped this device, this big, huge device with Sony. It cost like $350, and nobody bought it. It was not particularly good. We called that Google TV. And then Rishi took it over, and he said, we got this all backwards. Everybody has a phone now. We don't need these big devices. Your phone can do most of that. We're going to put this tiny, tiny device. And so that became Chromecast. And that product took off like a rocket ship. Did great. And then they went back and rebuilt Google TV. But they built it into televisions this time.
And at that point was when Chromecast came out with the tiny plug-in into the TV. Had Apple TV or Amazon Fire Stick existed yet?
Fire Stick did not. I think Apple TV did, but it didn't sell many units.
Right.
It still doesn't sell many units.
Huh.
I don't remember if Apple TV existed or not, but it wasn't meaningful. That product, I think Rishi and that team really came up with the insight of you don't need a remote control, you don't need a big device, you just need your phone. And it went from the difference, I learned a lot about consumer hardware. Like the difference between a $300 product and a $35 product isn't like a 10x difference in market. It's like 1,000x difference.
Totally.
In market. You can now put it in a gift bag. You can pick it up at the end of you can pick it up at a grocery store. Like the entire thing changes.
Well, what's funny to me is like, in spite of all of that, I think the best product is YouTube TV.
Which is confusingly named, has nothing to do with that.
But like, I think like aren't they like evolutions towards that? Like you got YouTube on one end, right? You have the original TV thing that you were doing that then turned into Chromecast that then
turned into Google TV.
And then did those two worlds kind of collide to then cement YouTube TV?
No. No, so
It's a
this
completely independent
is a
thing.
completely independent thing.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
so YouTube TV is Christian Ostlin runs that, and YouTube TV was.
Do these groups talk to each other?
Yeah, but they're like Google naming is always really complicated. I have a WhatsApp group that's constantly joking about how Google comes up with names for products. So YouTube TV is the term is it's an MVPD, so multi-channel video platform distributor. And so that's like Comcast, Cox, so on. So YouTube TV is a peer to those, right? So YouTube TV is a television service, which means that like is technically what that like Google TV is a layer of software that you can put on a Chromecast or you can embed on a television, and it gives you a way to access all your internet video services or any internet service on your television. YouTube TV is a subscription service like Comcast, where we set up literally like satellite dishes that take broadcasts from all these different cable operators, and we pipe it to your house and make it look like television. But delivered to the IP side of your pipe instead of the cable side of your pipe. This is like these two have like they have their relationship is if you have Google TV, YouTube TV can be one of the services on it. But you can use YouTube TV on many services that are not Google TV, and you can use Google TV with many services that are not YouTube TV. And so there's kind of confusing, but but it worked. So I don't think I always it's funny you like wrestle over these brand things a lot, but if the product's good, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, it matters, but I think the YouTube TV team decided to brand it with YouTube because YouTube felt like a bigger brand for it. I think it worked just fine.
It's a great product.
Yeah, it's very good.
You had mentioned Kleiner invested in your first company, and then you kind of said in passing, like, you left that company.
Yeah,
but
2002.
But you were the founder of the company.
I started Centrata out of college.
You were 21.
Yeah, I was 21.
And how long were you the CEO?
I was the CEO.
How long were you the CEO for?
I was the CEO for the first year and a half, something like that.
Is it like murky conditions on your exit?
No.
Okay.
No. We went through. I mean, the company was pretty mediocre. So it was basically there was a set of companies at the time with a similar idea. So sometimes it's called utility computing, sometimes it's called peer-to-peer computing. So our biggest competitor was a company called LoudCloud that turned into Opsware. So Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen's company. And all of these companies were basically 7 years ahead of the time because virtual machines didn't exist. And so when we talked about utility computing, it was literally people putting servers into racks.
Yeah.
So you like call up and you'd say, hey, I need, this much CPU. And so like nowadays, like this is like happens automatically with machines all the time. But at the time it was like humans doing this. And so all of us became enterprise software vendors. And basically all these companies became consulting companies. And so we would get like our first contract for Centrata was a $12 million contract with Quest Communications, which became AT&T Southwest Bell. And it's like $12 million. And if you get like a $12 million contract as your first customer before your product is ready, like I always joke they're not a customer, they're an investor. They kind of own the company. And I got an apartment in Denver. I had to go attend their management meetings. I was there 2 days a week. Like it wasn't really like a customer relationship. And so we just moved to a CEO that knew more about the consulting business, and that was fine. I don't think it was the company sort of eventually got sold and then resold, and I think the Ben and Mark did a better job of the exit with Opsware, but kind of similar outcome.
Crazy.
Yeah.
What a crazy story.
Yeah.
So let me fast forward to your next departure, which is you go to Google.
Yeah.
You're on make sure I get my names right here, Google TV team.
Yeah.
Then you go to the YouTube team.
Yep.
And you build YouTube from, at the time, like right after the acquisition? Like how long had the acquisition?
No, the acquisition is like a year and a half in.
A year and a half in.
Yeah.
And then you go to that team.
Yeah.
Then you go to that team and
we were like the second crew. There was like this, it was like the original YouTube crew. And then there was a bunch of us that basically all showed up the same day. It was me, a guy named Salar Kamangar, who's my boss, and a bunch of other folks. We all showed up as the sort of the second wave.
Crazy. And so you spend 5 years there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, those are a good 5 years, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't feel like it at the time, but yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, the first 2 years, I mean, we showed up. So YouTube was doing about 30 million in revenue and losing close to $1 billion a year. And like maybe the script of story is my first meeting with the CFO. So the CFO, Google had a new CFO, a guy named Patrick Pichette. And so I meet with Patrick. He lays out 3 charts. And the first chart says, this is how much money YouTube is losing per year. And it was like about to be about $1 billion a year. We paid 1.6 for the company. We're about to spend another $1 billion every year for the same company. It's like that's not what we had in mind. Second chart said, here's how much money YouTube loses per view. And it wasn't quite a penny per view, but it's very close to a penny per view. And the third chart said, here's what views are doing. And it wasn't like a little bit up. It was like a freaking rocket ship. Like the only chart that was a rocket ship was the viewership. He's like, this is the worst business on the planet. I mean, this is on path to lose tens of billions of dollars. Like this is never going to go anywhere. And his question was, who else were the buyers? Can we sell it to them? Because this thing is never going to work. And that was like, so our first 2 years was under deep scrutiny. We were broadly known as Google's first mistake.
How was YouTube spending $1 billion?
So
what was it going to?
Networking and music and the
licensing?
The licensing. I mean, YouTube is still, besides Spotify, depending on the year, the number 1 or number 2 biggest revenue source for the music labels. It's and then networking wise, I mean, by the time I left, we were 20% of the bits on the internet. And so that was like a lot of networking. And so in between those 2 things, it's just a lot of money. Now it turned out like all of that was very correctable. And thankfully, like I'm sitting in this meeting with Patrick, and Eric Schmidt was there. Eric was the CEO at the time. And Eric said, don't worry, Patrick, we're sending in the right team. They haven't really tried to turn into a business yet. They've been focused on user growth. Give them a chance. And like, thankfully we turned it around, and within 2 years we were profitable and a reasonable business and so on. But I spent almost 6 years there, and the first 2-3 years was like on knife's edge of like every quarterly meeting. We had board meetings, and every board meeting was like, not only like we might get fired, but like the whole thing was going to get shut down. Like there was a contingent of Google executives that thought this was a total lost cause. It's never going to work.
It's funny hearing you say that. It reminds me of another business today. Like that story is kind of ChatGPT.
Yeah. I mean,
the part of usage going bananas.
Yeah.
And spend going bananas.
Yes, but I don't think I think ChatGPT is a much better business because it wasn't, in our case, it was marginal spend per view was negative. Was that's not really the situation ChatGPT in. If ChatGPT stopped training new models, it'd be very profitable.
Yeah.
They've got forward R&D. Thankfully for the rest of us who are deep users of their product, where they're investing on our behalf, that's where real billions of dollars is going. The actual ChatGPT product is quite profitable.
Yeah.
I don't think I think it's a pretty good business.
Yeah, that's fair. But like if you look at, I don't know, let's just say Gemini versus ChatGPT today in the Google the world.
Yeah.
Like Google can just spend unlimited, basically. They can just spend.
It's interesting you say that because I think there's this perception that at these bigger companies, they have this big war chest and you can just spend it. And I don't actually think that the dynamics of the companies allow that to happen as much as you would think, because everything gets managed through a P&L, and like you're publicly reporting, and your incentives inside that company are not really to go take that money and spend it that way. I think it's one of the reasons why what Zuck is doing right now and bringing in talent is like a real founder move. Like that's a thing a founder can do and say, I'm gonna like kind of ignore a little bit what the street is gonna say. I'm gonna think in like startup terms. I mean, he's not thinking in dollar terms. He's thinking in like, I'm gonna spend 1% of Meta on building the AI future. Like, do I increase the chances of Meta succeeding by more than 1%? I should do it. That's a founder way of thinking.
Yeah.
But if you're inside a big company, you own a budget, like you don't just get to go deploy $100 billion from somewhere else on a whim. Like it's not like slush money that goes around. Like that's all committed. It's showing up in an earnings report. The CFO's got a hold on it. It's fun. Like my whole time at YouTube, every first 2 years or so, we were unprofitable and it was get profitable as fast as possible. After that, every dollar we made, 25 cents went to corporate and 75 cents we could spend. Like I effectively had a dividend to Google. And so like the idea of like, oh, YouTube has infinite money. They can spend whatever they like. Yeah, Google had a cash pile over there. But I had to go ask for investment from it. It's just like raising money from a venture capitalist, except like the irony of it is the analogy I would give people is if you're an entrepreneur inside a Silicon Valley tech company versus you're a business owner inside of Google, you like everybody around you can say no and only one person can say yes. Like Sundar can say yes, everybody else can say no. If you're Sam Altman, everybody can say yes and nobody can say no. Like he can just keep hunting for whoever can give him money. So I actually think it's easier to raise capital when you're not in that environment.
Interesting.
Than when you are.
But so let me ask you this. If Sundar, Larry, and Sergey all decide that the future of our business hinges on
then
AI,
they can do it. Absolutely.
Then they can just reappropriate the money printing machine from search and ads
They can.
into Gemini.
Yeah. I mean, practically speaking, and there are examples. I mean, Satya is, I think, a good example of, I think he made some bet. He's not the founder, but he made bets like a founder did.
Yeah.
But my point is that, yes, the CEO can do that. The founder can often do it in a way that is like a little bit more forward looking than sometimes even the CEO can. But the CEO can almost always do it. But if you're the business owner, you're asking me earlier if, like, as a YouTube owner, could I make product decisions on YouTube? Absolutely. Could I spend the YouTube P&L however we wanted? Absolutely. I could decide this is going on networking, this is going on music, all the music deals. We didn't have to get any approvals. We did it all ourselves. And any content deals we want to do, we do it all ourselves. But if I wanted money out of the Google cash balance, that's like going and getting an investment decision. And, what Mamoon is here is what Sundar is there.
Right.
Except there's only one of them. You don't get to go down the street to Reid Hoffman or Hemant today. You don't get to do that. Like, there's only one of them.
Right.
And if they say no, that's it. You go back with the tail between your legs. It's like, you come back next quarter and you try again. And so that's the dynamic that prevents actually using that cash pile that way. And so it's not, and I think it's one of the reasons why some of the big innovations, even big spending innovations, happen outside those companies.
That's a very interesting perspective. And then maybe can I press on that a little bit more? You had mentioned on the reels and shorts, there is a data deficiency, like meaning you need enough data to continue to power more of these things.
Yeah.
And so let me pull that like analogy forward into the current world, where again, we're like kind of living in a world where data and money seem to be the fuel that powers these models.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think about the data that Google has, that YouTube is producing versus like
the money?
Turns out like Sam probably can't just go buy a bunch of data. Like we've already scraped all the data in many ways. Like, how do you think about that?
By the way, when we say data, I think there is like data at rest, like scraped all the data.
Yeah.
And then there's activity data. But like when you think about things like recommendations, things like improving these models, like it's the activity data that is actually the hardest to get. It's what makes TikTok's algorithm good is the fact that they have, hundreds of millions of people doing it every single day. And it's not really static analysis of the videos that they do a good job of. It's that they just have a lot of people that are constantly swiping and unswiping, and that's great signals. YouTube, same thing. But it wasn't really that we had great intrinsic knowledge of every video. We actually had very little knowledge of what was in the videos, but we had a lot of data of watching people swap back and forth between them. And so I think, and to go to other markets, I'd say, if you look at ChatGPT, like what's its biggest advantage is that it has a lot of usage. And it's got the same index of the web that everybody else does now. And maybe they can like on the margins, like one of them is going to scrape books better or scrape magazines better or whatever. But the biggest advantage is like they have this usage data. And I think like self-driving cars, same thing. What's the difference? Why is there so much question or enthusiasm of like, can Tesla do better than Waymo and so on? It's like Tesla has a lot of cars on the road.
Yeah, they get that data for free.
They get that data. Like, can you map every street? Yeah, lots of people can map every street. But how do you get people actually like jerking to the right on the pothole on that street? Like, how do you get that? Like, you just have to watch people do it. And so that kind of data requires scale, and that's an economy of scale business that I think many of these businesses need. You just need. I mean, if I go to my current business, Grammarly, the rules of grammar are the same. Like, everybody has that. What do we have? We have 40 million people a day accepting and rejecting our suggestions. And so I'm
one of them.
Yeah. So we're reading what they're doing. We're able to make a suggestion. We watch really closely when we make good ones and bad ones. We now do way more than grammar, and we're about to do a lot more than that. But like our biggest advantage is we're just in front of people in a lot of places. And so our data moat isn't a static data moat. It's a living data moat. And I think that's really what powers the long-term gap between these businesses.
Okay. It's interesting you say that, because on the ChatGPT point that you're making, it's basically like, hey, there's a bunch of activity that's continuing to power these models. And as ChatGPT grows, the activity grows.
Yeah.
But in the Google world of this, they're like, great, activity is great, but context also matters. And so what Google would say is like, actually, what people really want from these models now is actually to know more about like go to my calendar, go to my email, like go read all these things instead of me training my ChatGPT. Just Google, go pull it for me.
Yeah.
And the context plus whatever, if the world stopped and there was no more new models, the context plus that model would probably be what their argument would be of like maybe their future.
I mean, I think yes.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, and this is a part of the Grammarly strategy as well. I mean, a big piece of what we're doing is we're turning Grammarly from being a single agent, your grammar agent, to being a platform for agents, where one of our superpowers is we have a lot of context. We're with you in 500,000 different applications, whether you're on a website, a desktop app, a mobile app. We're watching what you're doing. We're able to make suggestions on that behalf. We don't make good usage of that today. Like today, we only run this. The analogy we use is like we built an AI superhighway to bring AI right to where you work, and we only run one car on that highway today. That's your high school grammar teacher. And so we're going to broaden that, and a lot of that, what we're bringing is context. And so now when you're sitting and writing an email in whatever tool you're using to write an email, we'll recognize that, oh, you're writing an email to a customer. We have one agent that can help you with your grammar, and another one that has read everything in your Salesforce and can tell you this customer has an active opportunity. It's read everything in your support system and says this customer had an outage last week. You should probably respond to that. Or has read all your product marketing materials and says like the thing this person's asking for, that feature is actually shipping next week or whatever it is. And so I think that context really matters. So we're a big believer in that too. The context of where you are, what you know, what you're trying to do, all that really matters. I'd say in terms of your question of like, does ChatGPT or Google or Microsoft have a particularly good moat that way? I don't think so, because I think the number of applications people use is much wider than people think. I mean, I'll give you a fun stat. I took over as CEO of Grammarly 6 months ago. One of the early reports I got was our SaaS list. How many applications we pay for? Take a guess. How many applications do you think we pay for at Grammarly?
I'm going to say like, I don't know, 150.
Okay, 972. So that's my list. Right? And like how many of them come from Google? 5. How many come from Microsoft? Maybe 5. And so like the idea that like that's a massive moat. It's like, yeah, there's a moat there. Like those data sources are mostly available. Like we can talk separately about what Slack's doing right now. But I think for the most part, you can get to those things, but people just work on a lot of tools. And so that context moat, I do agree it exists. But I'm not sure that Google or Microsoft or so on have any particular advantage on it.
Very interesting. And you started Coda. You spent 8 or 9 years building that business. How would you, like in 20 seconds or less, how do you describe Coda?
Oh, Coda's all in one doc.
Doc. Okay. Yeah. Like a very rich, extensible, robust way to build documents, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think the core observation of Coda was that the world has fragmented productivity into documents, spreadsheets, presentations, applications, so on.
Yep.
And we thought that was silly. People don't think that way. People naturally want to solve a problem. I'm trying to run a podcast. I'm trying to do an investment. Like I don't want to think about my list of podcast guest goes over here and my scripts go over here. And so I just don't think that's how people think.
Yep.
And so we built an all-in-one doc.
And I'm curious, like in hindsight, using this Safari versus Zoo analogy, did you think, because when I said that earlier, you maybe shrugged. I'm curious, did you think that Coda ran into the Safari versus Zoo thing? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, Coda is a Safari. I mean, that's the value proposition is like you feel like if you use the Office suite and you're sort of in that dated world, like I watch people do it. They'll have this moment in the meeting where they're like, okay, somebody should write this down. What are we going to do? Are we going to do it? Is it a document? Is it a presentation? Is it a spreadsheet? And you go through this like complicated algorithm in your head of which one is it going to be. And if you're a Coda user, you just don't do that. You just create the doc and you can do all of it in one place. And yeah, it's a Safari. And like sometimes the needs change as you go. It's absolutely the right analogy. It's the media analogy is a little bit different, but I think it's how I would think about Coda.
And then was there an equivalent tension of zoos that were popping up around Coda of the Spotify's?
Yeah. I mean, like Airtable is a good example.
Yeah.
Like, I think Coda, like one of our biggest strengths at Coda is like we have a very robust, we call them tables, but some people would call them databases.
Yep.
And it's very robust and it gets compared all the time with like a company that's only focused on that is Airtable. Or, if you look at our document surface and sometimes gets described a little bit like a wiki, that gets compared a lot with products like Notion. And so we ended up in lots of comparisons where it's kind of like the best parts of that product and this product put together in one Safari. And yeah, I think that's like a reasonable tension as you build up that product.
Yeah. And then obviously maybe just by revenue, Grammarly was a much bigger business.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
They acquired Coda and then you became the CEO.
Yeah.
Like it was 8 years of Coda?
10.
10 years of Coda.
Uh-huh.
And like, I don't know, I'm really curious what you say. Like if you were evaluating, like when you were evaluating, like, all right, now what? Like I've been doing this for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
why do it this way?
What's the future of this business? Yeah. Like, did you want to keep chipping away at it? Was 10 years like, all right, 10 years is enough of anything? Like,
I mean, so this was definitely not that because I'm still running it. So this was like, I think,
but as an independent thing.
Yeah. But it's like, I think there are people that they ask me, it's like, was it an exit? And it's like, actually, I don't think it doesn't feel like an exit.
Yeah.
It's not the way I would describe it. The story is, I was in the middle of raising our next financing round for Coda. I had written a memo for that. The title of the memo was The Future of the AI Native Productivity Suite. And that was my investment memo. This is what we're building. I had a term sheet for that. I brought it to some of my other investors. And one of them happened to be Hemant Taneja, who sits on the board of Grammarly. And so I said, Hemant, would you like to participate and invest? And he said, before you do anything, why don't you go talk to the Grammarly co-founders? I think you might find it interesting. And my first reaction was, why? I didn't I think like most people, I had put Grammarly in this like different bucket in my head. And he said, just trust me, it'll be more interesting than you think. And so I flew up to Vancouver. That's where Max and Alex, the co-founders of Grammarly, live. Some of the Grammarly executive team joined. And we started by going through both of our vision memos, and they pull out theirs and it has the exact same title. And it says, the AI Native Productivity Suite. Now, they had a completely different view of how to think about it. And they sort of walked me through, hey, Grammarly's a much bigger business than people think. About $700 million in revenue, and it's like 40 million daily active users. And like it's a big business, right? It's a very, very underestimated business. And they said, but the thing that people most misunderstand about the business is what the core technology is. And they walked me through this view of how they thought about the AI Native Productivity Suite and how it basically, by the end of the day, it felt like this obvious mesh. And they're basically like two parts to what we talk about here. One is the future of agents. And I kind of give a little bit of a preview of this, but the idea is most people think the technology of Grammarly has to do with grammar. And there is a big technology base that's about grammar. But actually, the hard tech of Grammarly is about running AI right where users work. And so this is, sometimes we refer to it as a ubiquity layer or the AI superhighway. And the idea is that we can take about 500,000 or so websites, applications, desktop and mobile, and we can read whatever you're doing. We can annotate it in a way that's unobtrusive, and we can make changes on your behalf anywhere, whether it's Gmail, Slack, Salesforce. You could be in Apple Notes, you can be on Twitter, you can wherever. We can help you right where you are in the applications you're already working in. And the analogy was that we did all that work to do all those integrations, and we're only, we've got this highway with AI running right to the user. We're only running one car on that highway, this grammar car. And we started looking at Coda, and Coda we were building our new product is called Coda Brain, which was basically taking the Coda integration layer. So one of Coda's hallmarks is these deep integrations into many different tools. There's about 8,000 or 9,000 these integrations. We call them packs. And we were turning them into agents. And they said, what if you could immediately fill this highway with agents that could read all your context from whether that's Salesforce or Gmail or wherever else, could take action in all these different tools and so on. So that became one part of it. And the second part of it was Grammarly is kind of like, one description is like kind of like a moat without a castle. So it's like it works everywhere, but it lacks a great destination in the center of it. And the best analogy from my experience with this was, it's kind of like, imagine if YouTube had YouTube embeds, but no YouTube.com. Kind of what Grammarly feels like. And it turns out it's not quite true. Grammarly has an editor that it's a little hard to find, but it drives a massive amount of our business. It's actually where people get the best experience with agents. And so, Grammarly works everywhere you work, but it turns out that when you come to Grammarly's own editor, you have an even better experience and you're much, much more likely to upgrade, much more likely to retain, and so on. And we had zero engineers. The Grammarly team had zero engineers working on it. So they were going through this observation of like, maybe we should go build a document surface and we should really rethink. And if we're going to build document surface, we should probably think about the rest of the suite. And what if we were really not just a place where people came in and out of it, but really built their knowledge base and they're out looking at all the different products in that space. And there's only a couple products that have meaningfully innovated in the document category. And I said, well, we're going to go build this. And so by the end of the day, I was looking at it, it's like, well, the two of us are going to end up building very similar things. And now is a question of, would I rather do it on my own or do it as part of a bigger company with a much bigger distribution footprint, great capital base? And, it just seemed kind of obvious. And at some point in the conversation, Max and Alex said, and by the way, we think it'd be good to have a founder as a leader, and neither of them wanted to be the CEO, and said, would you be up for it? I thought that would be a lot of fun. So I kind of viewed it as, we're going to keep running. We're building roughly what we were planning to build with some twists and changes, but with just a much bigger set of users and distribution and infrastructure and capital and so on. So I view it as the next wave of what we're doing with Coda.
And then boom, you raise $1 billion. And then the first thing that you go do is buy another car for the highway, right?
Well, in that analogy, you bought another castle. Actually,
you bought another castle.
Yeah. So, okay. So if Coda was a castle in that moat, then Superhuman is
so
the
email client.
The email client. Yeah. So by the way, the raise $1 billion, and I think it's very important to have capital to be able to we talked about earlier this idea of there's many moats, but capital is a moat, and it's an important one to be able to make real moves. And then we went looking for, okay, we're ready to finish, start building out the rest of the suite. And one of the most interesting pieces of data we got was, if you think of Grammarly, the number one use case of Grammarly is actually email. 17% of words written in Grammarly.
That's probably what I use it the most.
Yeah. And it's 3 of our top 10 applications, our Gmail, Outlook Web, and Outlook Desktop. And so we started looking at that and saying, what would you do if you built an agentic email experience? And kind of like we're looking at the world of Coda as, if you think about the world of productivity, I kind of think of it as, there's one half of it that's work artifacts. You build a thing that we can talk about, we can collaborate on, and so on. And there's a world of communication, which is, this is how we talk to each other. Some of that's messaging, email, video, so on. I think of that as slightly different kind of software that people build. And so we started looking over there and saying, well, email is a dominant use case for us. So that seemed like an obvious place to go look. And then I sat down with Rahul Vora, the CEO of Superhuman, and we just did a big design sprint. And we said, what would we do if we were doing this together? And it was just crazy exciting. We just mocked out, here's the next, I think we have 3 years of roadmap of what we know we want to build. And it was just really obvious. If we did this together, we could build an email experience the existing Superhuman email experience is amazing. I've been a customer user for 8 years now. I have a inbox zero streak that they told me is at 144 weeks. So it's 2.5 years of getting inbox zero with Superhuman. But I think what we're about to build with it is much more exciting even than what's there today. And it just became an obvious one to build as the next part of the suite.
And this word agents, you've used it a few times. I probably hear it more than any other word right now. It takes different meanings depending on who's saying it.
Yeah.
How do you define it?
Yeah. So we've sort of, it's a big debate, and we've narrowed it down to saying agents have 4 characteristics, and we use that as our frame of where do we put agents. So agents have knowledge, agents have skills, agents have assignments, and agents have, sometimes we call it a soul. And so maybe I can break those apart. So and you can sort of map it to humans. So if you think about, I'm hiring new teammates, what do they have? So they know a certain set of things. That's like the facts they know. Sometimes those are global facts, like I know all the rules of the English grammar language. That's Grammarly. Sometimes that they're team level facts. I've read our support knowledge base. I've read our wiki. And sometimes they're personal facts. They're like, I've read my email, and so on. So they have knowledge. They have skills. There's things they can do. Skills, there's a bunch of different things. Sometimes skills are as simple as answer questions. That's how I think about ChatGPT, is like its number one skill is it can answer questions for me. Sometimes it can assist me. This is the thing that Grammarly is really good at, is it can come along and it can sort of nudge me and say, hey, I'm going to underline this thing and mark it up for you and nudge you in a certain ways. Sometimes I can do action on my behalf. I can actually send an email. I can actually go update a record or whatever it might be. This is the thing that Coda Packs have been really good at. So you have knowledge, you have skills, you have assignments. I think of those are the jobs. You say, every time this happens, I want you to do this. And like, if you think about Grammarly in that vantage point, you say Grammarly is an agent that says, every time I type a character, I'd like you to read what I did, look at the rules of English grammar, and go and underline with the set of rules, in red for anything that I absolutely must change, and blue for anything that looks like suggestions. And then finally, you have, sometimes we call the soul, which I think, a technical term for it would be the system prompt. And it says, this is how I want you to behave. You are the grammar agent. Your job is to help this person. I want you to be super factual. You are this person's personal assistant. I want you to be collaborative. I want you to be funny, whatever it might be. If you take those four things, I think you could use that to describe a person. And you could say, what is this person? Well, they have kind of a personality. They know a set of things. They have a set of skills, and I give them a set of jobs. And those jobs can be short running, long running. Short running is in like, can you get me a coffee? Long running is in like, can you help me build this product? But you take those four things, I think it defines that space of agents pretty broadly. And Grammarly fits very neatly in that. Like, it's a particular type of knowledge and skills. Everything we're building with Coda and Packs and so on is a different type of agents. But I'm really excited about ones that really broaden that definition of agents. Maybe I'll give you an example that was really fun for me. I was, and I don't know yet if they'll end up building this agent, but I'd be really excited if they did. I was talking with the Duolingo team and the Luis and his team, and we were just brainstorming on what a Duolingo agent would feel like. And I just thought it was a really interesting example. And he sort of heard me out on what's the AI superhighway and agents running on it and so on. He said, but I still don't quite get it. Like, tell me what a Duolingo agent is. And so we started brainstorming. He said, well, and from a user of Duolingo, I'd say, well, one thing I want an agent that if it could be with me everywhere, what's the first thing I want it to do? First thing I think I want it to do is like maintain my streak even when I'm not using the app. I want it to say, hey, I'm trying to learn Spanish. Like if I read 3 articles in Spanish, maintain my streak. That seems like a positive thing. If I could have my coach with me all the time, they wouldn't require me to go to tutorial today if I clearly have done my work in a different way. Maybe the next thing I want to do is like actually reach into my applications and work with me. So I want it to come in and I want that Duolingo agent to come and say, hey, you're reading in Spanish. Let me go and pre-translate the words you don't know so you can actually read everything. Or maybe you're reading in English. Maybe I should like build a little quiz for you. And I'm just going to replace words that you should know with Spanish and just kind of force you to do it in your natural rhythm of your work. So you can learn as you go. And then maybe the third thing is now I come back to the Duolingo application and maybe it knows something about what I was trying to do. And so it says, hey, today I'm not going to give you a lesson on how to order food at a restaurant. Today I'm going to give you a lesson on how to respond to questions on a podcast. Or I'm going to give you a lesson on how to buy a car, because it's clearly what you're trying to do. And in this way, I think so. There's one definition of agents: knowledge, skills, assignments, and soul. That's like one way to think about it. But another way to think about it is we're going to take every application and person on the planet, and we're just going to enable them to act like a human right next to you. And Duolingo, like if you put it in this terminology of like, think about language learning over the years. Language learning used to be you'd have to go to a tutor. And Duolingo like made this massive shift of like the tutor is in your pocket. You don't have to go. You can do it right before you go to bed. You can do it anytime you like. And I think the next step is actually it's not just in your pocket. It's with you everywhere you are. And it's like you took your physical language teacher and had them work next to you. What other applications does that make sense for? Like we spend a lot of time on students. And Grammarly is obviously a very popular product with students. Professors went from lecturing to posting videos of lectures. That was the YouTube generation. What if professors were like sitting next to you while you worked? What if they were marking up your work? You didn't turn in your work and wait for a grade. They were sitting next to you. So I'm not going to wait for you to fail and give you an F. I'm going to tell you now you're on the wrong track. You should read this thing. You should do this a little differently. And now I can help you get there. What if every application felt like that way? So anyways, there's a technical definition of agents, knowledge, skills, assignments, and soul. But then I think there's a little bit more of a conceptual definition, which is we're building digital humans and they can represent Sometimes they represent another human. Sometimes they represent an application. They can represent lots of different things. That's what we're bringing with us.
But Shishir, given those examples, like I think about what Grammarly has been for me over the past 7-8 years.
Yeah.
Like it's been that. Like it's been that.
Yeah.
So like I those 4 checkboxes, like I would consider Grammarly that person that's looking over my shoulder, like on my Gmail.
Your grammar teacher that's looking over your shoulder.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now imagine it wasn't just your grammar teacher.
But like, are we just now putting a fancy name on it? Because like that's kind of my point. Is like this has been around. Like this is a thing. Do you see what I'm scratching at?
I do. And I think the word agent in particular, I've now been through multiple generations of the web, and we've been through many different periods of labeling, and so I think I've learned to be a little bit immune to the label may change, but the concept is what matters.
Sure.
Like the word agent, I don't love the word agent. I mean, to be honest, when people say agent, I picture the Matrix.
I was just going to say the same thing.
And so it's like that's not a positive association, so I don't love it. But on the flip side, I think it just helps us have vernacular as we're going through things.
Sure.
And so we've had a lot of debate about should we use that word? Should we use a different word? We've got a stack of other words we could use. So I don't know that it should be a user-facing word. But when we're talking on a podcast, we're trying to understand a concept, I think it's helpful for you're going to have a lot of guests that talk about agents or some concept of it. And I think it's helpful. And I think there was if I go back for a while, it was pretty unclear what an app was.
But is the core assumption of an agent is that it's doing the work for you rather than next to you?
No, I mean, I would argue that being assistive is like Grammarly is like next to you.
Yes,
but
you would definitely consider that an agent.
I would definitely consider an agent.
Meaning I don't have to, you don't think that in order to definitionally accept agent, it could...
It has to be autonomous.
Yes.
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so at all.
Okay.
And that's what I mean by... I think it can be reactive. It can be like I have to ask it a question. ChatGPT serves as an agent. It can be assistive. It sits next to me and it works alongside me. Or it can be something I can delegate to. I think it's easy to think of agent as digital humans. And from that perspective, I'd say, is a human only useful if they are fully automatable and you can never talk to them? It's like, no. Sometimes you want a whiteboard right next to not right next to the human. Sometimes you're going to sit down and script this out, and you want to script out together. Sometimes you want to ask a question, and you want to have a discussion like this. I don't think I think defining agents as only ones that can go away is incorrect. I do think it's a magical thing that we can do with a lot of these agents. We can give them assignments that are long running, open ended, so on, because they're digital humans. That's how I.
And is what you want to basically go after is just try and tee off on the Microsoft suite? Is this the fullest expression of actually trying to go after it all the way?
I think the Microsoft suite is a great suite. My first job was working on Outlook. I love the suite. I think that definition of suite is about to dramatically change. And when people think about the tools you need in a productivity suite, I think that set of tools, I sort of refer to them as plumbing. You need them. I think it's rare to have a company that hasn't picked, you have a Microsoft suite or a Google suite or so on. But I kind of think of it like having desk chairs. That's an important thing, but it's actually not the productivity layer that you spend real time in. And so in my mind, we are building an AI native productivity suite, but I think it's sort of at a different layer than that. I think people that use products like Coda or Grammarly or Superhuman or so on, they view it as the next layer of what you do when you're really ready for that next level of productivity for yourself or for your team.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but is the idea to go build or buy a bunch more cars that race down the highway?
I mean, it could. I mean, I think we'll...
And what areas would those be, potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think...
you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
No, I think it's fine. I think we are... It's clear to me that there's an opportunity to redefine that productivity suite.
Slides.
There's a wide set of things that we get asked about that we don't have today or maybe people work around with one of our tools, work artifacts, communication tools. There's actual, what people would define as SaaS applications that we get used for a lot. So many of those are possible. I think in many cases we can do it in great partnership. And I don't think we have to buy everything. I think there are certain agents or surfaces that are somewhat fundamental. And I think in those cases, the type of innovation we're going to do is only possible if we are deeply embedded with them. And that's why I chose with Superhuman to take an approach of buying rather than just partnering. But I think we're going to do a lot that is partnering and helping people build cars on the highway. And I think that's I think it's going to be really powerful. And by the way, it's pretty unexpected. I don't think people think about Grammarly that way. I mean, you think about Grammarly as a tool. It does one job. I mean, the idea of thinking about Grammarly as a platform that can run many agents is, I think it's going to be a big mind shift for everybody. It's going to be really exciting.
When you think about making that transition successfully, like if you were to write a memo taking the other side, like if you were to steel man how this is wrong, which I'm sure you've done in 10 ways to one.
Yeah, I like premortems. Yeah.
Like, is there a way, like, how do you steel man that?
I mean, the risk, anytime you take a product from a product to a platform, there's a risk. And I think I've worked on enough platforms now to have seen both sides of that. Because one of the things to remember about platforms is to be a good platform builder, you have to let go. Yeah, like, if I go back to my YouTube time, YouTube was clearly a platform. What did that mean? It meant that people, like the positive way of looking at it is other people could build their businesses on top of YouTube. Sal Khan built Khan Academy. Mr. Beast built the Beast Corporation. Like, I think these were massive things that people could build on our platform. It also meant that we didn't have control over them. We couldn't say that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. And I think you have to be willing to let go and kind of adopt to that. It also means that your ability to focus that community is a little bit up to the community. You asked earlier about how YouTube evolved and where the Zoo and Safari and so on. Like, the fact that music and gaming took off on YouTube was no choice of YouTube.
Totally,
it just happened. And we could like steer all we wanted. We tried really hard. How come people aren't building Netflix style shows on YouTube? It's like, I don't know. They want to build music and they want to build gaming, and I was like, that's what they're going to do. And then like we would have to push to do that. And so I think when you take a product like Grammarly that is like very clear, single purpose ICP, you know exactly what you're hiring it for. And you're saying, when I turn it into a platform where Grammarly is one agent, it's one car on that highway, you know why you're hiring that car, but what about all the other ones? You're going to take some risks. Some people are going to build ones that are exactly what you wanted. Some people are going to build ones that are a little bit different. I think that's really exciting. And I mean, it's sort of similar to what happens as the phones opened up applications, and some of the applications we could immediately picture and many of them we couldn't. And like, I get excited by that. Like, there's going to be a bunch of things people are going to build here that are just completely different than what we've pictured so far. I gave a few examples of what I can picture, but there's going to be so many that we haven't pictured. Yeah. But you lose a little bit of control, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah. Maybe like a side random question.
Yeah.
Is like, you strike me as someone that's very ambitious. That ambition seemingly feels limitless. You started a company, then you start another company, then you go and you're building companies within companies, then you get acquired, and then you become the CEO of that company. Like, do you ever feel like a victim of your ambition? Meaning, like, if you were to if I talk to your wife, would she say like, is there a trade-off to ambition?
I'm a pretty hardworking person. So there's clearly a trade-off there. I think I don't think that's we're on the Grit podcast. We can talk about Grit, but I don't think you can do it without being pretty focused, without being all in on something. So when you have an idea, you jump all the way into it, and there's a trade-off there. I would say I think I bring that same trade-off to other aspects of my life. So I think it's an attitude that isn't like work versus personal. Like, I think I have two wonderful daughters. I have a wonderful wife. I think my daughters got that same treatment. I view them as products. I view them as, part of my job was to turn them into great adults. I think they're pretty good examples of that so far.
But you had the option, let's just say, of potentially selling Coda. Maybe it's to Grammarly or somebody else. You could have raised money, but you could have also just sold it and done
something.
I don't know. You're like, money is not an object. Hasn't been for a while, right? Like, hang out with, I don't know how old you're, like, hang out with this. I don't know. That's like, is there a trade-off there? Like, do those things even cross your mind?
It's, I think what my wife would say is, I would be bored to hell. Like, I don't see the world that way. Like, I think of it as, when you have let me back up a minute. When we started Centrata, Vinod made this requirement. You had to move from Boston to Silicon Valley. And at the time, I was very resistant. I was in Boston. Boston seemed like a great place. It seemed like there's no need to come to Silicon Valley. And since then, I've become a complete Silicon Valley convert. And I think that this is not really about the place. I think actually there are many places now that feel like Silicon Valley. But one of the characteristics I always tell people at Silicon Valley is this is one place in the world where if you're sitting down at a barbecue or dinner conversation, so on, and somebody starts complaining about something. Somebody says, how come this car doesn't work that way? How come nobody built a product that does X? How come? But somebody in that room is thinking, you're right. I bet I can fix it. And it's like a very can-do place. This is just a group of people that are surrounded by can-do people. It's like, why can't cars drive themselves? It seems like we can't. Why can't we just send things up to space and bring them down and not have them crash? And like, why not? It seems like any of that's possible. And I think once you get that bug, that's not like I don't view it as a job. I view it as an attitude. And so you don't really stop. I mean, it's not like, so what would I do? I'd pick a different idea and go see how we could make that happen. And this idea is, I think, more interesting, more central. Like, I think we get to redefine how digital humans work for the world. I think that's worth doing. I think it's a lot of fun. Yes, there's a trade-off, obviously, but I don't think of it as like, for me, the idea of like sitting at home and I don't actually know what I would do and not working on any ideas wasn't really the choice. It was really a choice of like, is it this idea or a different idea?
Right. But you could have, let's just say, in a bizarro world,
yeah, sold
to Microsoft and been, I don't know, fifth from the top or whatever. And the weight of the world's not on your shoulders. Like you have, it's like a different type of lifestyle. You're vesting.
But that's another question is being CEO of Grammarly versus running the YouTube team or so on. Are they like dramatically different in terms of, pressure, responsibility, so on? I think they're just different flavors of the same thing. I don't think they're that different.
How so?
I think...
you think the pressure felt the same of like being, I don't know.
There's different pressure. It's a different, and it comes down to this like yes versus no culture. Like when you're a senior executive at a big company, you're surrounded by people who can say no, and there's only one person who can say yes, and that creates a certain dynamic. But it's a lot of pressure. I mean, I definitely worked hard. I mean, there's no question, and there's also just a lot of overhead. And there's a lot of like things you have to do to be part of this company. And when you're running a company as a CEO, like it's this nice part of like nobody can really say no to you, and a lot of people can say yes. But at the same time, like nobody can like anoint you, or nobody can like guarantee a path the way it can happen in a big company. It's kind of on your own that way. It's just different pressure. But I don't think I think and usually what drives your pressure is the pressure to see an idea succeed. And so while I was running YouTube, it was, oh crap, like if we don't do a good job of this, like my fear was this product was, like I was saying, the viewership was through the roof. Like my fear was if we don't turn this into a real business, the product is going to disappear. And even at the time, there were already 1 billion people using it. It's like, that would suck. Like what a letdown for the world. And I think that like, that's the pressure. The rest of it is like, yeah, can Eric and Larry and Sergey, can they like relieve or like cause more pressure, less pressure? I think it's kind of a wash. You have a board of directors, so on. It's like the pressure comes from, when you have a mission you're trying to achieve and you're close, like the pressure is like, what if I miss? And it's all the details that matter. It's like, it's not, and you have to be motivated to do that. I don't think it's that different. I don't. And
is the pressure of missing really just like this product needs to be in the world? Like, let's just say for Coda, if you're like, I'm at the 10-yard line and I got to get this football across the line.
Yeah.
Is that pressure to get the ball across the line solely around just, I need to get this product into the world because what a shame if people are using Microsoft instead of Coda, for example?
So sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's competitive. But I think the cases where it is more interesting is the cases where it is categorical. Like I'll go back to to YouTube time. So I showed up, I wrote this paper, why doesn't television feel like the Super Bowl every day? One of the ideas was skippable ads. Obviously, that's a thing YouTube is very well known for now. It's like the skippable ad format. It took us 3 years to ship it. And part of the reason was the world thought it was a terrible idea. I mean, the sales team had a standing rule that Shishir's allowed to come speak at the sales conference, but he's not allowed to talk about his stupid skippable ads idea. It's like, that was the level of, like, it just seemed like so dumb. Why would you let people skip ads? They're going to skip 80% of the ads. Revenue's going to go down by 4/5. Like, why would you do that? And turned out that there was a way to do it that actually made a lot more money, and it all worked out fine. But I'm fairly convinced that if we hadn't stuck through it, if we hadn't taken that insight and stuck all the way through it, it just wouldn't exist. Like, it's not like would YouTube be bigger, smaller, so on. I don't know, but I think that format, that idea wouldn't exist, and I think that's a shame. I mean, for me, that was like. It was a motivator. I think of advertising as the grease of an ecosystem. It's like, how do you get products in front of people? You need to get it in front of people in ways that maybe they don't know they need it yet. And if you have a more effective way to do that, like the world just works better. Like people get to the products that they care about better. And it mattered to me. And I was pretty convinced that if I didn't do it, it would go.
It's just an interesting framing of how you feel pressure, because often the way that guests describe their pressure to me is failure, right? Pressure to not fail.
Yeah.
Because then you're a failure, right?
Yeah.
Then you did not deliver on your word and people are going to think you suck, right?
Yeah.
Or pressure to not let down the people that you hired or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Like those are usually the articulations of how people describe pressure.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, those were pressure too. I'm not. So I'll give you. There was a moment. So I was like 2 years into my time at YouTube. Things were not going great. We were growing, getting to profitability, but it was kind of chaos. We hadn't crossed that threshold, and we were still seen as the first mistake for Google. And I got recruited by the Facebook team, and they wanted me to come work on this job. It was, in retrospect, quite interesting. And I went to one of my advisors, a guy named Dean Gilbert, and I said, "What should I do?" And he asked me to make 3 lists. And I said, by the way, this was I would highly recommend this technique. He said the first list is your current goals, whatever your time frame is, the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is. What are you trying to achieve? And that could be work, it could be in the business, it could be in life, it could be personal, whatever it is. Write down your goals. Second one was write down the subset of those goals that wouldn't happen if you left. I called it the marginal list, meaning that if you left, I went from YouTube to Facebook, which of those goals just wouldn't happen? And then the third list, and so like second list is a subset of the first. And the third list was, and which of those things, fast forward 10 years, which one of those things would you give a shit about? And that was like I call it the purpose list. So if you think about, I have goals, you have your marginal goals, your marginal utility, and you have purpose. And that was like, and that was really hard. Like you look at this third list, you say, what really matters to you? And so I made this list, and my list of goals was long. I had a bunch of stuff we were working on. I had 5 things on my marginal utility list that were like, these were ones that I'm pretty convinced if I left, they would just go away. Like Skippable Labs was one of them. I was quite certain if I left then, we hadn't shipped it yet, I was the only one that
no ads are getting skipped.
That it just wouldn't exist. The product just wouldn't exist. And there were 4 others too. Some were people related. There's one that was sort of skills related for myself. I felt like there was a skill I was learning that if I left, I probably would never build that skill and so on. And the third list was which of those would I really care about? And I think 4 out of the 5 were still in that list of like, if I look back in 10 years and I said I left that, would I feel really bad about it? And that list had things on it. And Dean's instruction was, if that third list is empty, you should leave. There's nothing on it that really matters. If the second list is empty, you should definitely leave. Like if everything is just going to happen anyway, then don't worry about it. And to be honest, a little bit of why I left YouTube. I don't mean to say it in a bad way, but I felt like the marginal impact I was having on YouTube was starting to fade. And I felt pretty good that the team was able to take it to the next level. And I think that's been true. I mean, I think that Susan and then Neil have done a fantastic job. And I don't mean to diminish any of their accomplishments, but I felt like the unique things I was doing were no longer those things. It's time to go work on something that wouldn't exist. I go look at Coda. Would Coda exist if I hadn't committed to it? Definitely not. And that product was not going to be invented just out of monkeys typing on typewriters. It wouldn't exist.
Yeah, but couldn't you have done the same lateral that you did with Google TV to YouTube within Google? I don't know.
Yeah, Sundar offered. He said, go run the Google Apps team. And I don't think it was, I thought about it and I decided, and this is back to, we were talking about earlier of like the conditions for invention. And I think there's a lot of people that look over and they say, oh my God, that big company, they have this huge bank balance. They have all these users, so on. They're obviously going to be able to win this category when they put their mind to it. And I think sometimes that's true. And there are definitely examples of that. And then sometimes there's not. And I think there's some patterns to it, by the way. I think I came to the conclusion that I could not have invented Coda inside of Google. I don't think it would have worked. There are conditions sometimes where the innovation requires, I'll call it capital, and sometimes where it requires insight or change. And maybe I'll give an example. So famous example was Google Plus versus Facebook. This was an example where, or maybe I'll start the other way. Well, let's do Facebook versus Instagram, or Facebook versus Snap, actually. So Snap starts growing. Zuck decides, you know what, the stories format's real. We better do something about it. He starts 4 teams, one in each of the 4 Facebook units, and says, go build your version of stories, or build your version of Snap into the stories format. And, you know, the 4 of them ship. One of them really works. Instagram really works. And that was a case where he was able to...
He had already bought the Instagram.
He had already bought Instagram.
And Instagram shipped stories.
Yes. But so did WhatsApp, so did Messenger, and so did Facebook. All 4 shipped. Right. I think people have forgotten that, but it actually still exists in all those products. It's like you don't really. I never use it in WhatsApp or Messenger. Right. In Facebook, you kind of use it, but there's different comment that people use Facebook a lot less now.
Yeah.
But Instagram worked. Right. Yeah. So that was a case where he marshaled a bunch of people and capital and said, "Go build this thing," and it worked. On the flip side, Google tried to do the same thing to Facebook, and it did not work. And we built this Google Plus team. And we took some of the best people in the company and we put them on this project. And we said, go invent this thing. And we just thought you could put sort of an infinite number of people and capital on it and you could go compete in social, and just turned out to be wrong. It wasn't true. And I think the reason was like one was really a feature of a product that could be mimicked. And the other one was a rethink of how a space works. And that just requires different types of innovation muscle. You can't throw capital at it. In fact, throwing capital at it gets you all the wrong things. Like you'd much rather have a 5-person team working on it than a 500-person team working on it. And in those cases, like when I wanted to build Coda, we started with 6 people and we were 6 people for a long time. And that's what you needed. You needed that group of people. And if we were trying to do that and simultaneously figure out how to not screw up Google Docs and Google Sheets and so on, I don't think we would have ever built anything.
Yeah.
And there's lots of examples of that. So I, in my mind, there are cases where the big company can apply capital. And there's cases where it's actually completely counterproductive. And what you should really do is let a much smaller team that is unshackled from the safety net of the big company, go give it a try. And for Coda, I thought that was how we had to do it.
Aren't we in a fascinating test case, speaking of Zuck right now, where he tried the AI llama stuff within Meta? Clearly didn't work. Okay, whatever. It didn't work in the way that he wanted it to.
Yeah.
So he buys Scale for $16 billion, and now he's putting out $100 to $200 million offers per person to come and join this team. Like he's going to try again. Yeah, he's going to try again.
Yeah,
and it didn't work internally in that same way. Like he couldn't put his best people of the Google Plus version.
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the things I admire about Zuck is his level of like if you are the big player, you have to find those moments where you can apply capital to a problem, capital or distribution. In this case, it's capital. He's applying to a problem, and sometimes you have to do it in a way that seems outrageous. I mean, we think of this as a big bet. I mean, think about Satya's bet with OpenAI. I mean, investing $10 billion in a company at that stage was like unheard of. I mean, all of us were looking around. It's like, what is OpenAI? I mean, now it seems like so obvious, but in retrospect, I think that like that is a case where for the most part it worked. I would argue Llama is more of a success than people think.
Mm-hmm.
We use it heavily at Grammarly, and I don't think it's. I think people underestimate it. I mean,
but it clearly wasn't enough for him to not shake things up.
It wasn't enough to not shake things up, and I think he saw a bigger prize out there, and he's going after it. And Zuck has done it multiple times in Instagram. I think what he did with Oculus. I think there's multiple times that he's done it, and we'll see if this one works or not. I mean, I wouldn't bet against him. I mean, I think he's. I think he's. The thing I most admire is his willingness to have a view and put his money where his mouth is.
It's insane,
right?
I mean, I don't know if the rumors are true, but the $200 million that he spent on the guy that ran AI research at Apple, that was like triple Tim Cook's salary, and they're like, we're not matching this, and he just hires him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing I would remember about that is I think people think about it in dollar terms. I think that the media reports them that way. If you think about it in dilution terms, it's very different. And I think maybe this is another line of logic. When you're hiring a senior executive, I think you have 3 ways to think about compensation. So one is you think about compensation relative to their alternatives. Like what, in that case, I think you're talking about Daniel Gross. Like what was his alternative? Like get to outpay. I mean, he was running a very successful venture fund. He was building a new company with Ilya. Like, he had, that's what it costs. The second is comparison to his peers in the company. And that keeping that balance is really hard. And Zuck clearly threw that out the window. And he's going to have a big problem when it comes to refresh time for the rest of his executives. And the third one is marginal impact on the business. And that should be your test. Like when you're buying, like when I'm buying a company, when I bought Superhuman, like we paid X% of the company for Superhuman. And my math was, does it increase the value of the company by at least that amount?
Yeah.
And if it does, then that's a good deal. Like that's the way I think you should think about it. And you should think about hires the same way. Like would I go, like if you're hiring a new executive into a startup and you say, would I give 1% of the company to this person? In my mind, the right logic isn't, is this like the first one, is it better than what they would have gotten elsewhere? We call that BATNA. Like, what is this better than their best alternative to a negotiated agreement? How does it compare to the rest of the executive team? That's the next test. But the most important test is, do they increase our chance of success by 1% or more? And like $100 million sounds like a lot to the rest of us because we're comparing it to BATNA.
Sure.
We're comparing it to this is what Cook paid him. If you look at it the other way and said, I think the total of all those offers is still 0.1% of Meta's market cap. Like if I were sitting in Zuck's shoes and saying, does all of this increase our chance of success by 0.1%? I mean, of course, he's lucky to be sitting on $1 trillion market cap, but does it do that? Like, if I was sitting on his board, I'd say, yeah, that sounds great. Now, The fact that he did it mechanically as offers to individuals, and he also like completely raised the stakes for every other company while he did it. That's a tactic that was unexpected. But the math of does it increase your chance of success by 0.1%? That doesn't seem that crazy to me.
But the interesting thing about what Zuck is doing relative to what you did with Superhuman, for example, is he immediately, the market cap either goes up or down the next day after that's announced that he's doing these things.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this like ruthless public judgment that comes with every decision that he's making at that scale. Whereas for you, like, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Like we don't know.
We don't know.
We'll find out. And so you're like relatively insulated from judgment for quite a while.
Yeah. Private companies have an advantage that way. And I think that when I think about founder-led companies, to be honest, I didn't look at the stock price for Meta, but my guess is it didn't move. Or maybe it went up.
I didn't look.
But Mike, wouldn't it be amazing? I don't think anybody reported that way. Wouldn't it be amazing if he made offers for 0.1% of the company and the stock moved up by 0.1%?
Totally.
Nobody would have even noticed.
Totally.
Right? The stock fluctuates by that much every day. But I think, nobody's looking at it that way. That like he acquired a company. He did it person by person, but he acquired a company. I think his view of the world starts with, I'm going to act like a founder and the market's going to reward it. And I think it's one of the advantages of some of these. And to be clear, when I say founder, I think Satya acts like a founder. I don't think it necessarily literally means founder, but there's a mindset in that view that says my job is to increase the long-term value of this asset. And I'm not going to start by how I'm going to be judged that afternoon, even the next week, even the next year. I'm going to start with my list of like, these are the things I'm trying to get done. And like, I'm going to be judged over time. And, sometimes I'm going to be right and sometimes I'm going to be wrong. I mean, Zuck's been right about a bunch of things. He's been wrong about some too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not everything they've done has been a success.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the ambition of it and the put your money where your mouth is. But I also think people are misunderstood. Like if you're a capital allocator and you have a multi-trillion-dollar market cap, you can now make bets like that. And you're kind of squandering it if you don't.
Well, and isn't it worse to not make the bet and then miss the ride?
Absolutely. Right? I mean,
and that's why we're in this crazy time, because there's like a lot of that FOMO that's kind of driving what are some of the most competent leaders ever, like Satya, Elon, Zuck, Sam. Like these are serious people that are making ridiculous, like they're getting loans for data centers. Like Zuck's getting a loan for a data center, like this is like crazy big bets and they're going for it, going for it out of fear of missing out. And they're all like one-upping each other.
Yeah.
And you get like a new model that comes out the next. It's insane.
Yeah. It's gold rush.
It's insane.
Yeah. I think it's really exciting. I mean, I think it's so far, I think it's not exactly like a gold rush that hasn't paid off. I mean, this is not like, I view it, there have been past gold rushes that were rushes, things that didn't pan out at all. This one is clearly working. I mean, it's like
as defined by
the level of usage of AI is skyrocketing. I mean, this isn't like a small trend. I mean, you can look in your own personal life. You can look at the stats for any of those companies. Look at what Anthropic's doing, what OpenAI is doing. Hopefully you consider us in that category with Grammarly. But like, I think it's obviously working. So this is not really that, like the mechanism of the bet. Like, do you take debt to buy it into a data center? Do you give offers to individuals? Yeah. Like these actually, they seem like big bets, but in reality, I don't think they're really that risky.
Yeah, working as defined by users, though.
Yeah.
Meaning, if the CFO of Google, when you were at YouTube, defined working as users, he would have said you're crushing it.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He defined it as your P&L.
Yeah.
Right? And if you define it by your P&L,
And for some of the companies, even the P&L, I mean, obviously NVIDIA has found a way to turn it into profit.
Yes.
I mean, we'll see about some of the other companies and
Sure.
the rest of the layers. I do think there's some skepticism on whether foundation models have the right economic incentives of the team that invests all the money in the foundation model and the team that accrues the value of it. We'll see if that trade-off is clear. But like in a macro sense of like, would you invest in this space? I think you absolutely would. And the thing I'd say about Zuck is Facebook has a long history of investing in technologies that monetize completely different ways. And I think that, like almost every website out there uses the same React library to lay out the website, and Facebook open sourced it and takes enormous value out of it and monetizes it through a social network that has nothing to do with React. And I suspect what's actually going to happen with Llama and what they're doing, I think it may look very different than how other people are monetizing AI. So I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't feel like a frontal view of what people are seeing as AI there.
It's just funny. Like you wake up one morning and it's like, you see a tweet. It's like, oh, don't bet against Zuck. And then the next morning it's like, don't bet against Elon. And then the next morning it's like, you never bet against Satya. And then it's like, Paul Graham is like, Sam Altman, like never bet against him. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, if you ask further, there is a list of people they'd bet against. This list is all pretty good.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing this. Really fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's great.
Are you hiring?
We are, absolutely.
Like anything in specific, anywhere in specific?
Grammarly.com/careers. Primary offices for us are San Francisco, Seattle, New York, Berlin, and Kyiv in Ukraine. We're actually kind of the most sought after employer in Ukraine. It's kind of interesting dynamic. But everything, engineers, product people, marketers, salespeople, we've got spots open for everybody.
I asked the same closing question. When you hear the word grit, what do you think of?
Boy, we covered a lot of different types of grit already.
Sure did.
Sure did. Maybe I think of three things. So I'll call it idea grit, problem solving grit, and work grit. Maybe I'll describe each one. So in my mind, idea grit is you have an idea and you can see it when nobody else can, and you stick through it even when the first signals aren't great. Like for me, my best example of that was probably skippable ads at YouTube. I mean, it took me years after joining to even ship the thing, much less when it became successful. And I think that's sometimes you have that grit. Even today, starting Coda, like it took us 4 years to ship Coda. It was a product that took a long time to get to a thing where people understood what we were building, and that's 4 years of like every dinner party, people being like, "What are you working on?" And user studies where people are like, "I don't get it." That type of idea grit. I think we look at these products as overnight successes. One of my favorite examples, Figma. We were Figma's first customer. Coda was. Figma's V1 product wasn't collaborative. Like it literally wasn't a multi-user product. Dylan and Evan would come over and they'd work with us and so on. And we now look at it, and Dylan's level of grit, like it's a similar story. It took them about 4 years to ship their first version. Like people have completely forgotten that. It looks like an overnight success. So that's number one, is idea grit. And I think people really underestimate it. It's one of the reasons why I think some of these startups kind of have to be done outside of the big companies, because you just can't, the pressure and idea grit is way too high. Like you just expect it to produce in 6 months in a way that's really hard to do elsewhere. So that's number one. Number two is what I call problem solving grit, which is you've got a problem. How hard are you going to look at how to solve that problem? And this is almost the opposite of idea grit. Like you don't have the idea yet. How hard are you going to push to find the solution to that problem? And I think there's many cases where people focus on speed of decision making or so on, and they miss that often the right way to solve a problem is just not going to be apparent in that first discussion. It's going to take a little bit to see, okay, that's the solution to this problem. Maybe I pick a YouTube example. When I got to YouTube, it was like obvious we're spending way too much money on music, but the way to correct our balance with the music industry wasn't to get music off the site. That wasn't going to work. And so we had to rethink our way of working with the music labels. And there were a couple things that came up in kind of unexpected ways that completely reset that balance. And the third one is the most mechanical, is work grit. And I just think when people think about, I'm a hardworking person, and I think people underestimate the day-to-day work grit that it takes. One of the things, I have a friend named Des Traynor, the Intercom co-founder, and he one of his statements, he said that really sticks with me, is your team's productivity is upper bounded by yours. If you're like days behind on your email, you don't respond to Slack, you're never prepared for meetings, so on. Like, you can just expect that behavior from everyone else in your company. And on the other hand, if you're on top of your shit, then you can hold them to that account. And I just think when we talk about grit, it's like stick to an idea, be willing to work on a problem until the right solution emerges. And this is day to day. Like, respond to people, call them. When a person is having an issue, talk to them now, not next week. When a customer is having an issue, call them now, not next week. Like that kind of grit, I think, is dramatically underestimated, but very evident in all the great leaders and founders I know.
That's in the pantheon of one of the best grit answers I've ever heard.
Good.
Thank you.
Hey,
I appreciate you doing this.
thank you.
That's it for now. If you liked the episode, please leave us a review or go back into the archives where we've done more than 200 episodes with some fantastic folks. This podcast is a Kleiner Perkins production, and I'm Joubin. Thanks for listening.